We are live. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Neeta Bhushan. What is up?
Hey, what's going on? Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
This is gonna be fun today. Just off, you just landed from New York, so this is right early morning podcast. You got the sun in the background there, so I love it. You're just saying bye to your little ones off to daycare, so this is real life, which I love.
This is real life. We gotta love it. I mean, I feel like that's the theme of my life recently. It's like, all right, that sucked. Now what is in full effect of flight delays and my kids melting down. One of them woke up at 5. The other one was annoyed because the other one woke up at 5. So it's chaos and bananas. And I know you have two as well, but very different age ranges.
But that's what makes it special. I think it's just that day to day unexpected moments. When you can learn to be present and appreciate them, I think it makes everything so special. And that frustration, you learn how to turn into like almost like a positive moment, which I think everything about what you're doing now in your book and all that stuff like that. Tell me a little history about yourself. Like, how did this all start? You're obviously you were a dentist, if I'm correct.
I was a cosmetic dentist, and grown up right across the other side of you in Chicago.
Yeah.
And Lake Michigan. And I mean, I lived by the water and grew up with immigrant parents. My dad was from India. My mom was from the Philippines. And so, that hard work ethic was instilled since like day one. And I was the oldest of two younger brothers. And so there was a lot of pressure on me to do and perform, and so that was kind of a little bit of like the background of my upbringing. But I would actually become a caretaker when I was 10 years old. So that would begin this period of having to grow up early, having to essentially kind of take a lot of these adult duties because my mom got sick. My mom actually got sick with breast cancer. And so she battled that, I want to say, for about 6 years, and in and out of hospitals. So imagine 10 years old through 16. Your kids are 14 and 16. So for me, every day after school, I'm taking the bus, going to the hospital where she was. I was Thoric Hospital and just doing my homework there, every day, keeping her kind of, entertained. And we did piano lessons on the weekends and dance classes. And so we would literally perform for the nursing staff. And so that was a little bit of my life. And when she transitioned, when I was 16 years old, we were finally like, okay, we can breathe, right? We can start moving forward with our life. And then a year later, my brother, who was 15 at the time, it was homecoming. And in the States, they've got the homecoming games with football and all of the things. And so we were supposed to meet, and we never did because he had an asthma attack and collapsed in front of his school. And so he was 15 years old, and it was a year after my mom died. So that was a big shock to the system. And not only that, my immigrant dad, who's Indian, I mean, culturally, societally, it really played a huge toll on his mental health in so many ways. And he fell into a deep depression. And so for those few years, I was a senior in high school, 17 at the time. And we were in the depths of darkness. I mean, when I say that sucked, it was a full suck, but we were in survival mode. Like, you couldn't even think of what does healing even look like, because we were just in survival mode. And then 2 years after that, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he died 10 months later. So my mom, my brother, and my dad all transitioned before I was 20. So I was 19.
Wow.
And I had to take care of my youngest brother, who was 15. So that was a lot to enter into my 20s, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't expect the podcast to start off like this. And one thing about me, Neeta, is when I do these shows, I usually try to find as least information about my guests because I just want it to be organic and just curious and stuff like that. So I'm in awe. I mean, I can't even imagine what you went through and how you dealt with it. And obviously, it created a very strong woman and a very inspiring woman for everything you're doing right now, which I appreciate. But it's just no one should be going through that at that age, at any age, right? Seeing you're
Yeah,
pretty much all your loved ones going through pain and suffering, which is going to reflect on everything you do. From that
totally.
moment on, obviously, you went to obviously pursue a career, an incredible career and all this. What was the process from there on? Like, who were you with? Like, did you have aunts? Did you have like grandparents? Like, who were you with that actually gave you the support? Because obviously you still needed some support on your side at that young age, right?
Oh yeah. So one of the things that and I'll get to the story where, how did you become a cosmetic dentist and then shift everything?
Yeah.
So that was my survival stage. I had to do what I had to do. And so one of the big through lines in my life, ever since I was 16 years old, ever since I had to bring everybody together. I was the glue of my family. I mean, a lot of my extended family, my grandmother, my aunts, I say that I've been raised by a pack of wolves because my aunts are such matriarchs, but they're very strong, tough love, tiger parenting, like
Yeah.
so stereotypical on both sides, actually.
Yeah.
Um, and so everything was around education, everything was around success, around pride and legacy. And so what I was told when I was young, going through all of this, we all have to make meaning of certain sucky moments in our life. And I was told, well, Neeta, you're resilient, you're strong. You're strong. You've got this. You've got this. So I would pin up all of my emotions, the awful, the crazy, the just the deep heart-wrenching pain of grief and trauma. I just buttoned it up and I would use studying as my coping mechanism. And that's what I did all through up until my 20s. Of course, every single brown person is like a doctor, dentist, lawyer, engineer. So I, of course, followed through of what the ghosts of my parents or the spirits of my parents would want.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the after school jobs that I took. I was an assistant for a dental office. I was 15 years old and it was right across the street from my house. And I worked for this guy. His name was, and I kid you not, his name was Dr. Horrible. I mean, what a name for a dentist. And it's a Polish name, I think, but I mean, what a name for a dentist. And he could have probably pronounced it Horbal, but it was horrible. And and so that began my comedian career. No, but I noticed that in those moments when things were so dark and so deep and so just the world was I felt like this cloud would never end. I would take to making these patients who were getting a root canal on a Saturday morning. I would make them laugh. I would channel all of that energy subconsciously or whatever. It made me feel good that I didn't have to worry about who was dying, to literally focus on other people. And that was the first step of many that would, inform kind of what I do now. And so then fast forward to when I became a dentist, that hard work ethic took me only so far because, with the foundation is not fully healed,
Yeah.
there's going to be cracks in it. And so one of my other coping mechanisms was my love relationships. I held on to people because I was so afraid of
Losing.
abandonment.
Yeah.
I was so afraid. So I would hang on to relationships that probably weren't healthy until I met my biggest awakening, I would call it, in my life. And that would set the tone of healing in my 30s. And so I got married and I fell in love. I got married, did the big Indian wedding. And I found myself in a very toxic environment and abusive relationship. So much so that I had to haphazardly leave my home on December 31st. And this was over a decade ago now. But during that time, I had already built a big, successful dental practice. And I felt like, I was living lie. I was living this lie that for everybody else, right? Everyone from the outside was like, wow, look at her. She's so young. She's not even 30. She built this amazing practice. She's lost everyone. She is, all of the family friends would look up to me as a role model for their kids to become doctors and, all of these things. But I was fully in breakdown because all of the things, all of that grief, all of that pain was starting to catch up, where I literally, December 31st, 2011, I broke down fully, shattered into a million pieces. And it was, looking at a mirror in my big, 5-story home in Chicago, and just in my master bedroom, just looking in the mirror, thinking like, how in the world did I just get here? Because I'm so afraid of my life right now. That's how bad things got, where I had to leave, take whatever I could. And again, it was through the support of my brother and another friend. So community has been such an instrumental role. And I do talk about it. There's a huge chapter on just how to build your soul support posse in the book, because I'm such a big advocate of it. A lot of people don't really know how to do that. But so that's when I fully broke down is when I started to then say, I can't do this alone. I can't do this alone. I need help. And that would begin this next season of life where it was full vulnerability and full just letting people in and full surrender to what was then going to be the next, 7 years of healing.
It's so incredible that you look at, you could be in a grocery store and for some reason, because things I'm going through right now, you realize that you can go stand in a grocery store in line, or stand at stand in a bookstore, and you never know someone's story.
Mm.
You see somebody online, you see social media, you see this perfect image, this perfect life, and you never know what they're truly going through.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize that, and it's like there's so many people out there that are suffering in pain alone. And I love you said community, because I think it's probably the most important thing is building a strong community, being kind to people. And that all starts with being kind to people, and it comes back in tenfold when you just live your day to day of just being kind and being good to people, because it all comes back. And that community starts building very, very quickly. And over time, those moments you do need them, like people are there for you. They could be there for you, but you have to be open and vulnerable to allow them to be there for you. So I love that. What was the next chapter in your life? Like, how did that all happen? So I would just assume you separated.
Oh, yeah. So it was a very tumultuous divorce. And when you leave someone who and in the way that it did, it was very messy. I mean, my subtitle is How to Embrace the Magic in the Mess and Find the Joy in Chaos. Lots of moments of chaos. Anybody listening who is kind of in that season of, wow, there's a lot going on. Wow, I'm so overwhelmed. Wow, how am I going to get through this? I totally feel you, because you will get through it. And part of the healing is going through the pain. It's the only way, right? It's the only way. I numbed, I avoided, I buried, I distracted, and we can do all of those things because it's easy, right? And I did all of those. I shoved it under a rug for years. And part of why I became such a advocate for emotional health is because we don't have a lot of these tools growing up. There's a societal way of accepting our emotions, right? The good emotions that are accepted are we get validated on, so how happy we are. And, a lot of the sad emotions, many people don't know how to sit with. They want to say, stop crying, right? And a lot of my learning was learning how to actually sit with my sadness, because for all those years, it was buttoned up and put in a closet and shoved in the back or under the bed, until I could no longer, like, it was bursting at the seams. And I remember vividly one of the days that I had a big dental office, a practice. I owned the building, and I was doing well for myself, but I was spiritually dead. I had no idea who I was on the inside, and no one knew. I was keeping up this idea of emotional perfection.
Yeah.
And of course, you work as a cosmetic dentist. You're working in like millimeters, so things have to be kind of perfect for your. It comes with the job description. But I remember vividly the days after the full, when I had to get a restraining order, and I was just in fear mode, and it was just full PTSD. I had a bunch of things in my car, and I was sleeping on friends' houses because things just got to a very, very dark place. I don't normally share this.
Yeah.
But I remember I had to look into myself. And this was the very, very first time of just leaning into my words and my intuition and just trusting my gut. And I remember we had a full day, because it was the first week we opened back up from the holidays. And I had surgeons. It was like a full, imagine if you go to a full practice, like the suction is everywhere, patients in the waiting room. And I remember I was wearing a mask, but I had my little, my goggles on as well. And I'm just tears are just flowing and flowing. I couldn't put it anywhere. So I said, that's it. And I called everybody to the main little lunch area. And they're like, what is going on? Like, what needs to be said right now? Can you see, like, this is a really busy day? And I said, I don't care. Here's what's happening. And that was the very first time. And I said, I need your help and I need your support. I'm going through this really tough time right now. I don't even think I can go the rest of the day. I'm going to power through it. And I want you to know that, things are going to be shaky. And if you need to know certainty right now, you can leave after today. I don't know if I'm going to keep this open. So I had to be completely transparent. And oh my gosh, it hurt me to my core, because I was so used to being this people pleaser, this saying that everything is going to be okay and I've got it all under control. Absolutely everything was so chaotic and messy, but that's where the magic was coming, because in that strength of speaking my truth for the very, very first time, everything shifted. The community came together. This community, we ended up 2xing the actual practice while I was actually taking more time off, because everyone just stepped in massively.
Stepped up.
And that's where my leadership roles started to grow exponentially, because then I started a nonprofit. Then, part of the healing process was diving into so many different modalities of this next evolution of saying, okay, EMDR, plant medicine, talk therapy, somatic breath work, somatic healing, energetics. I just went full on and immersed myself. It took me to, 45 different countries at the end of it. And I realized that I was, that there is this thing where you're meant for more. I started a few other projects that led me to speaking at Google, that led me to working with startup entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, which then led me to starting to speak at these organizations, of course, around my story, but really in my research, when I eventually sold my practice, and then I moved all the way to the Bay Area, I was very curious about how people made decisions. And a lot of it was inferred and now is kind of, put into the book. But one of the concepts that I talk about in the book is called the bounce factor. And it was inspired because one of the women had got hold of my story. And if you know what goes on in the Bay Area, and the school systems there, and a lot of the pressure to perform, because everyone there is, you know, developing the next Uber and Facebook. And so one of the moms said, can you please come and talk to our moms group? And I said, what do you mean me? I'm not even a mom. I don't even why would you want me? And they're like, we got a hold of your story, and is it possible to build resilience without having to go through the depths of losses that you went through as a teenager? Because we are reeling as a community. We keep losing kids to suicide in this area. And that really hit me, and it started to transform the way that I would then be creating impact, because there was way more that so many people going through tough times needed a framework, needed tools in order to get through. Yeah. And so that birthed one of the core principles of this book, a full foundation of how do you actually build resilience. Because many times, we look at any meme online, or even some of the things that we tell our kids, it's just subconscious. It's nothing, I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. It's just, I was told resilience meant be strong, but there is so much flexibility in that. And when you think of the Latin root of resilience, it means resiliere, which means to bounce, not taking a glass. We take a glass of water, but like you let that glass of water go on your nice floor, and that glass is going to shatter. But what if we actually took a ball, like a basketball even, and you feel the ball, and you know that ball has a little bit of give, but if you let that ball go, it's going to bounce. And so that would then inform this next chapter.
There's two things I want to dive into there. One thing you said a little ways back there is intuition. And I think it is something that a lot of people don't hone into. And I think it's so important to actually really believe in your intuition. I think it's such a strong thing that a lot of people don't really focus on. Let's talk about that just quickly. Like intuition, when you have it, it's a sign something is not right, or something is right, and you just have to focus on it. Why do you think a lot of people don't really focus on their intuition? They don't really understand it properly.
Yeah. So you hit it right there, Jeff. It's really listening to the inner voice. Either it's in your head, you feel it physically, and we don't pay attention to those signs. And for many years, in fact, my stomach would get in knots right before something really big would happen, and that's our body telling us, hey, slow down. Hey, pay attention to me. There's something that physically happens. And for some of us, it's a lump in our stomach, or, lump in our throat, or our chest starts to, well up. And many times there's a concept called, the external locus of control and internal locus of control. I talk a little bit about it in my book. And, not to bore everyone with details, but the idea is that when we're developing our intuition as a muscle, most people need that external locus of control. They need to be validated by external factors. So friends, community, society, social media, all of it. And we're getting a ton of that now in this stage. But before, if you remember the sages, the wisdom seekers, the teachers, they would spend hours and hours time outside. And we're not trying to say everybody needs to go meditate on a mountain. Yeah. But to really cultivate that, it's a muscle, and it is spending time in quiet to recognize, hey, what's really going on? And it's one of the concepts that I talk about in that framework, the bounce factor. It's how do you build your radical self-awareness, where you can attune and ask yourself, well, how am I really feeling about this? Like, I just got invited to this party. I've been traveling all week, and my external locus of control would be like, yeah, I haven't seen everybody in a really long time. I want to go. I want to be there. And the inner people pleaser in me comes up as well. So we know if we have built this muscle of radical self-awareness, that's the key to our balance. That's the key to knowing internally what feels good for us, or if we're actually reacting because somebody else is saying, you should be there, you
Yeah.
should do this, you should do that. And most of us, we ignore it because we're like, well, our biological response, we just want to belong. We
Yeah.
want to be loved. We want to be accepted. And what's the worst thing that can happen if we say no? Oh, we might get rejected.
Yeah.
We might be abandoned. We might be isolated. So it is our human nature to want to be in community, right?
Yeah.
But many times we are the only ones that can know. And that is a muscle that we build, because it's only after or through some dark times, like maybe a breakup, or like your inner knowing, when you first kind of know that you may not like the job that you're in, and you're kind of like, ooh, is this for me or is this not for me? I see everybody creating their own hours and businesses and doing things that they love. Should I be doing that? Or maybe I just find something else that suits me, right? Most of the time we're asking a different question. We're asking, or we're going in our pity party. And I talk a little bit about that, the victim spiral.
I love that. I love that you just said that right now. The victim spiral. I mean, I think that's something that it's almost rewarded through social media. I think when people through social media talk about their wins, their accomplishments, either that jealousy through society comes out, and you're not patted on the back enough. But then when you put up a story as a victim, you feel like you get so much more support. So it's easier to be a victim than to be a winner.
And it's easy. It's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's easy because you get way more
how could that change? Like how could that change, if that will ever change?
So, and this is one of the reasons why I wrote the book, right? Because when I wrote it, even the title, that sucked, now what? It's not this sucks.
Yeah.
Now what? Because this sucks would imply that we are still in the suck. That sucked is past tense. So therefore, we have an awareness that whatever happened in the past is now in the past. Can't do anything about it, can't go back to it, can't change it. I can only make peace with this.
Yeah.
And so that sucked. And even it's, the whole metaphor of like ripping a page brand new. And in this case, the page is a brand new color in all of the ways, right? And you've got this bright boldness. But the thing is the now what gives you an opportunity to create a blank slate. The now what gets you from sitting in the suck. Because I talk about the difference of most people who bury their emotions and numb and distract and use, unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of it was my story growing up, right? But then when you move to phase 2, into the now what stage, how do we crawl out of it to actually, what I call, not just bounce back, but fly forward? And I have a whole kind of toolkit of tools to help you fly forward past the times that sucked. And much of it is because of, first, you're recognizing you're actually in the suck. And there's got to be that, what I really I love so much, but the idea of personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a really, really quick story. When I was very much in the suck after my divorce and my relationship, and I was with a dear friend of mine that I grew up with, and the first question he asked me was, "Okay, Neeta, and what was your role in this?" And I was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" I this was like pre-healing, pre all of the things. It was just like shortly after I got on. I'm like, don't you see what I actually had been through? I mean, can you believe that, it was just, I was still in that grieving stage. We have the 5 stages of
Yeah, of
grieving,
course. Yeah.
and the anger coming up, and just the confusion, and how all of these emotions are just coming out of you. And so looking back, it basically thanked him, because that was the first time someone would ask me to not just be in the victim, because we could get supported in that victim stage, and I can have that pity party of one and say, and my friend could have been like, you know what? Absolutely. This person was such a jerk. I can't believe it. But what he did ask, and that was such a gift, he said, how did you contribute? And I'm not trying to say anybody who's been through some really big traumas and things, there's a whole difference between being in the victim mode and being a survivor of something. Okay.
Yeah.
And I talk about that in the book, but we're talking about kind of everyday things. You get slighted from a friend, you get betrayed, you invest all your money and you lose it in some sort of, opportunity. The business that you wanted to do, it doesn't take off, right? It's so easy for us to kind of blame the outside, but then where do we take personal responsibility?
Yeah, of course.
And so for me, it was, well, how did I contribute to that? What could I have done differently? Or it's even making peace with that. And for me, I think I told you that I just wanted to recreate a family I lost. So I was willing to sacrifice my beliefs, my morals for myself, because I wanted love. And so to even have that realization, that's your personal responsibility, to have that realization. And it can come later, right? Because in the beginning, we get triggered, we get angry, and many times our closest friends, family members, and the family members are the worst, because they'll trigger you the most. And you're kind of like, wait a minute, why are you saying that? How can you say that? But at the end of the day, you're like, man, they were right all along.
Yeah. I think it's that mindset of every loss has to be turned into a lesson, or it is a complete loss, right? When it becomes a lesson or an awareness of how you could grow from it, you could turn into a positive, right? So I think I love that. You're currently married, am I correct?
Yes. So I did find love again. I did find
What
love again.
how many years after was that?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, I definitely had to go through my whole journey of
Of
healing. And this
course,
went
yeah.
through, I married myself in Bali. And this was a commitment to myself. I think every young person should think about this as they, get into their relationships. But it was really a commitment to myself, that I would honor myself every day. And funny enough, and this was in 2015. Funny enough, I was also, this was when I was going through Asia, and I was beginning to start to write my very first book, Emotional Grit. And so with my very first book, I was also speaking at different places. And 2 months later, after I said my intentions and I wrote them in a journal and I wrote a letter to myself, just honoring me and kind of, dating yourself, as they kind of call it. I'm not a relationship expert, but definitely, an expert, and really understanding and knowing, well, who do you want to be in relationship? And I had to really get clear. Well, if I wanted somebody that was honest, I needed to be honest. If I wanted somebody that was going to be vulnerable, I should go first and be vulnerable. And so 2 months later, I reconnected with somebody that I'd met 3 years prior. And that happened to start our incredible love story. And so all the way in a very different part of the planet, in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And we ended up speaking at a conference in India a year later. And a year after that, we had 9 different weddings around the world, and one of them was in Burning Man. And a year after that, my first child was born, my son. And then 2 years after that, my was born. So it has been very full.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I've been married now for we're 2000 the end of this year, September 20th this year. It'll be our 20-year anniversary. Time,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Time flies, to say the least, right?
Wow. Wow. Congratulations.
I,
That's huge.
I appreciate that. What does motherhood mean to you?
Mm. So, and honestly, I think that all of the life lessons have really culminated for me to really speak truth to this book in this stage of life, because when I became a mother and I wrote all of my own journey of even more healing that happened in the journey to becoming a mother, because I had to let go of my fears of visiting a hospital. I had to let go of my fears of, somebody dying again. I thought I had processed all of those things, but even more of that came through when I was pregnant with my son. And there's one of the chapters in my book, I talk about sometimes the beauty of surrender. And surrendering doesn't mean that you're relinquishing all control. You're just not trying to control everything anymore, because I wanted that home birth. I wanted it to be supernatural. And it was everything and anything opposite to that and more. And when my son came into the world, I mean, it fully shifted how I saw love in myself. And it gave me my husband and I, Ajit and I, such a huge opportunity for reparenting ourselves. And for me specifically, because I grew up so early at 10 years
Yeah,
old. And so it has been the most healing process, because a lot of the things that, I was told not to do, or, it's just, you're now bringing this out into the fold, which is why I was so excited to write this book. I wrote this book when my daughter actually, I gave birth to her, and literally the page, the words on the pages just came through, because it's a different kind of that sucked. It's a different kind of suck moment. It's not the big T traumas that we've all kind of been through, but it's the day to day in your face, like, oh my gosh, you forgot to change her diaper. Now she's got a rash. What is she going to do? It's just
yeah,
all of these different things, and the complexities and the interpersonal dynamics between Ajit and I, and then the lack of sleep and, and even going through postpartum depression, because I really did go through it. And you don't understand the gravity and how big those emotions are until you get to the other side of that, to say,
yeah,
oh, wow, the first 3 months were a blur. And what they say about postpartum depression, I never thought of it, because I thought that this is my programming. Oh, I'm such a happy person. I love life.
yeah,
But it manifested in a different way. It brought up a lot of rage for me. It brought up a lot of anger that I used to judge, that I would say, why am I feeling this way?
yeah,
Why I shouldn't be feeling this way? I'm a mom. Look at me. And I would judge myself and critique myself. But it gave me, again, the resiliency, the flexibility, the agility to say, all of these feelings are welcome, because they're all yours. And they're just parts of yourself that you've suppressed so much because somebody on the outside said, that's not how good girls behave. That's not what is acceptable here. And in motherhood now, having two, because it's a different ballgame, and you know this,
yeah,
it has really softened me up in where I talk about, in the third part of the book, To Fly Forward, where you can have all of the emotions at the same time, where it could be messy and they're making literal messes. But then at the end of the night, when they're gone to bed, on your phone looking at those photos of them, and that's the magic. You're celebrating
yeah.
both the magic and the mess. And so motherhood has taught me to embrace all of it, because all of it is happening
Beautiful.
all at the same time, and
All of it's beautiful.
all of it's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
it's hard and it's
but
chaotic. It's beautiful.
nothing in this world that's truly precious or has meaning is going to come easy.
It's true.
And anybody that ever thinks in their mind that they're prepared for parenthood is full of shit. You change, you modify, you grow, you learn, you adapt, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
you're continuously learning. I mean, I always say this: the day you die is the day you stop learning, right? So you're continuously learning. You're
Oh,
continuously
totally.
learning how to adapt, and and as a parent, I think the biggest lesson I've ever learned, and it took a little while to learn, but you are consistently being an indirect mentor to them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize it. When you walk into a mall, if you open a door and hold the door for somebody, they're watching this. These little moments saying thank you, the littlest, simplest things you don't think of, or how you
Mhm.
act, or how if you're kind to somebody, if you're not kind to someone, they're indirectly learning from you from a very young age. So it's so important as parents to understand that indirect mentoring is not what you teach them, it's what you teach them when they're not, when you think in your head that they're not paying attention.
It's so true.
That I think is very, very powerful as a parent. Once you understand that and you're consistently understanding that everything you do, every action you do will be a reflection on how they grow and adapt, right? So as long as you understand that, I think it's such a beautiful thing, and it's such an incredible, like I love parenthood. I love being a dad. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. I love my kids. Like I'm
But you're probably you're like the really fun dad. I can see
yeah,
Jeff, you
yeah.
being the really fun, like the gregarious, and do you still
I
like
I
wrestle
I
with them?
Oh yeah, we do. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we go to the gym every day. They literally a 14, 16-year-old. Like they're done school, they pick up, and I still drive them to school every day. They're in high
Oh,
school. I still drive them to school because I enjoy it.
cute.
I pick them
So
up.
cute.
They get home. We get out our gear, and we hit to the gym, and we work out together, and we do things together. I call it with my kids. I call it they get every 3 months, so they get 4 birthdays a year. And what that
Mm,
is I don't call it birthday because it's all about building memories, that memory bank, right? A lot of parents have that mindset where it's consistently what I could give to my kid, and the reality is I learned from a very young age that it's not that present you give to the kid, because it's that reaction of them looking at you and them feeling like my dad's giving me something because he feels, oh, I feel he's paying attention to me, he's giving me that time, right? So I started from a very young age pulling them out of school separately, and I separate and pulling them out of school every 3 months. And that day is 100% for them. It's almost like we call it their birthday. And whatever they want, it's my daughter. She wants to do her nails. She wants to go for lunch. We just spend a whole day together. And it's about building memories. It's not about buying gifts. It's about just building memories. And I do that consistently with them. And I think there's going to be a time when we're not around.
mhm,
Those memories, that's all that counts, right? I mean,
mhm.
my dad passed away this just actually passed 19 months,
Oh, wow.
and I was the 45-year-old that talked to my dad 3 times a day. Still, I would call my dad on the way to work. I would call my dad on the way home, and I would call my dad to say goodnight to him. And I had an incredible relationship with him. And and when I lost my dad, it was a sudden, unexpected passing, and
Wow. Wow.
it was those memories where he was a blue collar factory worker, but those memories of like road trips and that time he spent with us, he was always there. So being present. So those memories are what you stick with. So my mindset as a parent is building up those memories, building as
Yeah.
many memories as you possibly can, because that's all that has any meaning in this world, right?
Oh, it's so true. I'm so sorry about your dad. Wow. And for it to be sudden loss. I mean, that's the hardest part because
You never say
there's
goodbye,
never,
right? Yeah, you never say
yeah,
goodbye, right? Of
yeah.
course, yeah.
And there's never that real closure as well. Yeah. And it's always a hard time for grief. I feel like anytime that you lose like a parent or a friend or even a child, it's always a hard time for grief, and then it's always with you. How
Yeah.
has that process been?
Oh, it's been tough. It's been tough because I've taken on. I seem to have taken on two families now because my mom was married for they're about to hit their 52nd year of marriage, and
Wow.
they
Wow, that's
my dad took early
beautiful.
retirement at 20. 55. My mom actually she's a couple of years younger. She decided to take early retirement as well. And for the last 20 years of his life, they never spent one day apart.
Oh my
So
God.
all of a sudden, she has this empty big house, and it's so it's life changes, right? And it is unexpected. You learn how to adapt, but it's a cycle of life, and you learn that we're here for such a short period, and
Yeah.
people think it's as long as it passes so quickly. And you of all people I'm speaking to, you understand this more than probably anyone, right? So um, yeah, it's just you just have to build memories with your kids and appreciate
Yeah.
that. So your book, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. Did you always have in your mind, because all the moments you went through, that eventually this would turn into a book? Did you ever have it like thoughts where you're already writing little storylines down? Like, was this the process, or it was just like, I got to put this all together?
Oh, yeah. So I think that for most of my childhood, when I was young, one of the ways that I would capture my memories was just through journaling.
Yeah.
And I had my little diary and with a little locket. And, I remember being 14 years old, my mom being sick, but I'd always carry my journal locket, with me with a little tiny little key. And so I never thought that, 15 years later into my 20s, I would pick that habit back up again. And that would be a consistent for me. So journaling has always been consistent. When I was young,
Yeah.
I probably wrote about the crushes that I had, the boy crushes that I had. And then really, so that was one of the elements that I still use. And it was such a big process, having written 4 books now.
Yeah.
And so, and it's interesting because I would, every year it would be like a whole new journal process. And I still have every single journal. And
You do, huh?
so, oh yeah. And so it was important for me, especially for this book, that like I had my team, because of course, you have with 2 kids, I mean, how much can you do? So
Yeah.
I had my team and my editor actually take all of, the little Neeta notes. And it's interesting because she would bring up like, can you believe like you said this when you were,
Yeah.
X age? And she's like, it's so consistent to what you would say now. So it's very interesting, the wisdom that was coming through. But to answer your question, did I know? I honestly didn't know until, until the divorce of like, after having started a nonprofit to champion confidence in women and girls. And I started, giving my time. And in the book, when we're flying forward, the fourth and the fifth steps is like when you're magnifying in your life, you want to start giving back. And you want to start giving back because your story can be somebody else's medicine. Your mess can be somebody else's medicine. And so for me, it turned out that so many people, kind of even my tiny little community of Chicago, are going through a lot of similar things. And so there was this then I would get asked, are you going to write a book, or how are you? And I'm like, that has always been a lifelong dream, but I don't know, because I'm a dentist and I can talk about these things. But when somebody asks you, I feel like, when you're ready, the teacher arrives, or, the teacher
Yeah.
shows
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that the Buddha saying? And so
Yeah.
it's like one person asks, then another person asks, then another person asks. And I'm like, can I really do this? Like, but I'm a dentist right now. And so then when you start thinking about that, your reality starts to shift because you're focusing now on something else. And you're like, maybe it is a possibility. Well, let me look into that. Let me see what writing groups are. Let me just continue journaling some of my thoughts every day. So I think that all of us, have a book in us, but I think more specifically, when pay attention to those signs, that's like your intuition, because your might be talking to you through other people, because people are consistently asking the same types of questions, right? And so because I like to think we're mirrors of each other, like you and I having this conversation is no coincidence today,
Yeah.
right? And so, and because you're squeezing me in last minute, but I think that because of that, we are able to just have, a little bit more grace and even just an open curiosity of, what is actually like getting
Yeah.
transpired here? Maybe I am going to be an author someday. And so it's like those tiny little steps can then turn into your next chapter, your next evolution.
Yeah. I
Which
totally agree.
is Yeah, which is where I kind of, the fifth step to that fly forward framework is when you're thriving, when you're in this next level of yourself, because you've grown, you've shifted, you've evolved from your sucky moments, that now you're giving it back, and you're now, not just stronger as a result, but you have more capacity for yourself in ways that you never thought.
Yeah. I mean, I've written 3 books, and the first one I did was called Entrepreneurial Dad, and it was just I was finding a lot, and that journey started about 2.5 years ago. When I found a lot of when I was talking to a lot of dads that are entrepreneurs, friends of ours. I've been an entrepreneur for 27 years, and I've done
Wow.
decently well for myself. And when I would speak to other entrepreneurs or I mentor other entrepreneurs, I would see that balance of I got to be an entrepreneur, I got to build this business, and they would really shift away from being a parent. And it was like I built these companies, I've done well for myself, I got all these properties, and I've never stopped being a great dad. Where at least I think I've done well as a dad, right? So and I started putting that on paper and started journaling that, and that came to that. And then the other two were just children's books. When my dad passed away, 7 days later, I was stuck where I didn't want his memory to be just forgotten because he was such an incredible human, right? And I took pen to paper and I wrote 2 children's books, and I actually put my kids in them, and they actually look like them, my
Oh,
dad, and they were just children's books, and they say kindness. I don't know if you see that. It
oh my
says
God, I
it
love
says
it. I'm gonna
kind.
get them for my kids.
It says kindness goes a long way. Grandpa Joe's adventures, and the other one is Strawberry Mountain, a lesson of gratitude. And they both
Wow.
start off with just one page, and it says, in loving memory of Grandpa Joe, you were tender and kind with a beautiful memory you left behind. And there's little rhyme books on just being kind and sweet, right? So it's that understanding where sometimes you just need to take pen to paper, whether it's writing a book or just journaling. I think it's so important just to put your thoughts down sometimes. And I love that you
Yeah.
did all that journaling, because I think it's just an escape for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't do it enough. And it really, really does help. It does help with healing. It does help with emotion. It does help with just putting your thoughts down and being able to see it on paper. I think is so important. And I'm the type where I'm every morning I still write. I still literally have do lists. Every morning I
Yes.
write a do list. I'm constantly with a pen and paper writing do lists.
Same.
And yeah, I think it's just valid being able to see
Well,
something.
and I oh, totally. And I think also, it works in a different part of our brain. It activates, because usually we're in our left brain where it's like go, 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 go. We have to do, 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 do. But if when we're writing or doodling or drawing or coloring, even, and there's so many different ways to do this, but you're then activating a different part of your brain, which then can start growing your perspective. It starts to clear out the
Yeah.
gunk in your brain that's constantly like go, 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 go. I feel like somebody had mentioned that it's kind of like a plaque in your brain. Dental reference, Jeff.
Dental reference.
But so you're starting to clear that out, because you're inviting more of the other side of the brain that you're not normally using. And I think
Yeah.
that's why a lot of us still write down to-do lists. And I'm not saying typing it. I mean, typing it is
No.
one way, but literally actually, because you're using a different part of your brain, the
Yeah.
right part, which is also the creativity.
Yeah.
It's the, and there's different benefits to that. So I'm totally with you on it. It's one of the biggest healing things that we can do every day.
This has been incredible. I'm actually happy to fit you in. I'm happy that I got to
Aw.
do. This has been I love everything about you. Like you're obviously just when you meet somebody, one thing about me is I always try to see how genuine they are. And you're 100% genuine. You can tell it just by your sound of your voice, the way you talk and everything about you. So I love that. Where could I get a hold of you, get your book, just everything about you? Like, where could everybody get a hold of you?
Yes. Well, I have a few little surprises for everybody listening today. So when you actually get the book, you can get it on Amazon. That Sucked, Now What? But you can go to thatsuckednowwhat.com, and it actually comes with a 44-page digital workbook. We put so much love and thought into this because I know that so many people are on different levels of healing and reconciling relationships. And it also comes with, for free, a 5-day mini healing practice, the 5 forward practice, where day 1, we start with healing our relationships. Day 2, we start with having optimum energy and vitality, and where we're actually leaking our energy, if we're people pleasing or if we can't say no. Day 3, we talk about abundance. Day 4, we talk about how to be brave and have brave action. And, from those sucky moments. And then day 5, we end with coming back into ourselves so that we are building that awareness. We are leaning into our intuition. So definitely grab it for a friend. I mean, I know that a lot of people are collectively going through sucky moments of their own in whatever way, shape, and form. So this is one of those books that'll definitely give you some solace. Thatsuckednowwhat.com. And you can find me on Instagram, Neeta Bhushan. And I do have a podcast. We drop episodes weekly, actually bi-weekly, The Brave Table, have brave conversations. So I'd love
it's called The Brave Table.
The Brave Table. Yeah.
I will, yes. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to go check that out. I would love to be a guest as well, like you said there. And
oh my gosh.
I'm going to put on our show notes for your book. I'm going to do that. I know your book is dropping January 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna get my team. We are gonna hold off podcasts for a couple of weeks, but I'm gonna get my team to drop this before then, so you get as much promotion as possible. No worries. And this has been awesome. Thank you, and I'm glad we met, and I'm sure we will.
I know. I'm so glad Kian introduced us. I want to stay connected. I think you're amazing, and I love the dad energy. I love all of it.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so much, John.
All right, bye, love.